In this video, I'll be talking about the animations property. Now, this section has a lot of material and it might be a bit harder to understand at first. So please do listen carefully. You might have to repeat this lecture a few times before you really get it because there's a lot to digest. So basically, what an animation property does is it lets your element gradually change from one property value to another. So if I, let's say, have a divider and I want its width to slowly change from 100 pixels to 400 pixels. I want to animate it from 100 pixels to 400. What happens if I use the animation property is its width will go from 100 pixels to 101 pixels, 102 pixels, 103 pixels, 104, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 until it reaches 400 pixels. And now just hearing just from that, you probably think, hey, isn't this the same thing as transition? What's the difference between here? Well, I will show you with an example and it'll be very obvious what the difference is. This lecture, there's a lot of stuff. So for this example, I've used pre-typed code. And what this particular animation will do is take a divider with a ID of A and it will move it from the left, the right direction, 600 pixels. Let me just get and show you what this looks like in our browser. So what it just did, if you saw, was that it took the left property and starting from 0 pixels, moved it to 600 pixels. It does this once without me doing anything. I didn't prompt it, it just did it. And directional things is not the only thing you can change. For example, you can also change the color. Give me 1 second. So in this example, I will change the background color of a divider with an ID of A. I'll change its background from red to blue. And let me show you what this code would look like in the browser. So as you can see, the color changes from red to blue. Let me just repeat that to show you again. So I'll be showing you next how to create a CSS animation. So if you want to create an animation, your first step is to create a keyframe statement. You need to create a keyframes. And let me show you the syntax for that. So here's how to write one. Your first thing that you write is at, then you type keyframes. Next, open close bracket. And inside of this keyframes, what you write is first from, open close bracket. And what from means is this is the initial starting value of the CSS property you want to animate. So let's say I want my divider's width to grow from 100 pixels to 1000 pixels. My from value would be width is 100 pixels. And the other statement you write is to. And as you're smart, you probably guessed, this is the final value of the CSS property, your element to change to. So in our example, I want to change from 100 to 1000 pixels. So your to value would be width equals 1000 pixels. And lastly, for keyframes, you have to give it a name. So in our case, if I want to name it X, I'd write X. This is the name of your animation. Now, that's the keyframe statement. And the other thing you have to write is inside of the element that you want to animate, you would give it a property of animation. And what you would write is what is the name of the keyframe you want to use. So in our case, X. And then what I would write is how fast, how long do you want this animation to last? So if I want this whole animation to last 3 seconds, I would write 3s. So that's more or less a simple example of it. And now let me show you a real example. So just take the syntax. Let's create our keyframes and let's give it a value of, let's give it a name of grow. What we're going to do is take a divider with a red background and we are going to grow its width from 200 pixels to 1000 pixels. Okay, so its starting value width is width 200 pixels and we're going to grow its width to 1000 pixels. So width final value 2 is equal to 1000. And let's set the divider itself. So divider, give it an ID of I, give it a ID of give it a ID of A. So let's decorate a divider, give it a and give it a height of 200 pixels, give it a width of 200 pixels, and let's make the background color red, and let's add an animation property. Animation. Let's add for animation the name of our keyframes we're using and how long we want it to last. 3 seconds. So you can also have the same keyframes be used by multiple elements, of course. Just let me show you what this might look in the browser. See, this is an animation at work. It goes from 200 to 1000. Let me repeat that just by refreshing the page. Ta-da, and there's your animation. Now, at first glance, some people might think, wait, isn't animation and transition the same thing? Actually, no, they're actually very different. Let me show you the identical change, but in transition. So let's set a divider. Let's give this new divider an ID of B. And let's give it basically the same height and width as A. 200 pixels, 200 pixels. Let's give it an identical background color even. So also red. And let me do the same thing with transition for B. So for B, let's set a hover. We want the width to hover to 1000, and we want to set a transition property. The property we are transitioning is width, and we want this to happen over 3 seconds. Let me now show you the difference in the browser between the two. See, the animation does it automatically, while the transition needs me to do something before it begins transition. So the difference is animations do their change automatically. Transition, I need to do something as the user before it changes. So anyways, I believe this brings us to the end of our video. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'll see you next time.